input your name and the country you're joining us from, but just for the purpose of interacting in this webinar, you can introduce yourself. Okay, so while that is going on, we will start. Ready, depending on where you're joining us from. I am delighted to be here. I am fortunate, like you heard, the Director for Research of TORASIF, and I will be taking us through Introduction to Grant Writing, a webinar organized by TORASIF and YOHAN. Please keep the introductions coming. Okay, this is what we will be looking at. First, we'll look at what grant writing is and why you need a grant in the first place. We look at how you can pay a grant proposal, right? We look at the writing and the post-writing phases. And then we'll look at some general tips, some do's and don'ts, and then I'll be sharing some funding opportunities. Okay, so after the introduction, the next thing I want to humbly request from us is this. I know that about 50% of persons that are joining this webinar, I know that 50% of persons that are joining this webinar are joining maybe because they have identified a grant opportunity and they want to be sure that they're in the best position to win it. They want to be sure that they are prepared. They want to be sure that their proposal is well written. So there is a favor I'll need from you. I want you to share that grant opportunity in the chat box so that we can share it with others, because one of the essence of this webinar is that I would share, and I will not just be doing that alone, collaboratively with your help and assistance. I would share grant opportunities with participants, right? I don't have a lot with me today, so I'm really looking forward to the opportunities that you would share. Then share it in the chat box, and then whether Felix or Kingsley, you can compile it and maybe let us have it in the WhatsApp platform, or for those that are not in the WhatsApp platform, you can post it in the chat box towards the end of the session. Please, I'll be reminding us as we are going, because it's really important, and I really want us to do that. Thank you very much. So, what is grant writing? When you hear grants, what are the things that come to your mind? Grant writing is a process. Underline the word process. It's a process. It's not an act. It's a process of making a written. Underline the word written, because more often than not, a grant proposal is always written, or at least the preliminary stages of the grant writing or the grant proposal or the grant sourcing must be written. So it's a written financial request to a grant making body, right? So we'll talk a little bit about grant making bodies. Who are they? I think that how you can access them. I think that is somewhere between the session or maybe at the end of the session. So this written document that you write is called a grant proposal. Now, there is something interesting that you should know, and that is, there are two occasions for submitting a grant proposal. It's either you submit it for an open call. Felix, please be checking the chat box so that you can be sending the opportunities to the WhatsApp platform, or anyhow that is comfortable for you, compile it so that we can have it later.
All right.
So the grant, there are two approaches or occasions where we need to submit a grant proposal. It's either there is an open call or there is no open call. Now, they can be an open call. Let's say RSTM, Real Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene, which is the grant I won last year. They are currently calling for grant applications. So that is an open call. They are announcing in their Facebook, their LinkedIn and then Twitter platforms, and then their website, so you can see it's open. They want you to apply. There is a link for you to apply. That is an open call. Now, there are other times that you submit a grant proposal even when the call is not open. And you do that through a grant inquiry letter. Let's say you know that RSTMH funds project on public health. And then you have these big public health, big and bold, I like to call it big and bold public health idea that you need funding for. You can first send an inquiry letter, a grant inquiry letter to RSTMH through their email. Okay, look, I have this kind of idea. I want to know if you can provide me with so and so funds. Of course, you are not going to go like this. It has to be more, it has to be better than that. It's just an example I'm giving. So now, if RSTMH are interested in funding your proposal, they can tell you should submit the full proposal. The first time you're writing to them, you're not submitting a proposal, you're sending an inquiry letter. So if they are interested, they request for the proposal, and then you develop and send your proposal. All right. So those are the two ways we can submit a grant application. If they are not interested, they can tell you wait for our open call, or we don't fund this kind of project, and so on and so forth. So why do you need a research grant? We have a lot of chats in the chat box, but I want some sort of engagement now. I'm going through the chat box. I want you to tell me why you need a research grant. Oh, did I say research? Sorry, I'm specifying research. Why do you need a grant? A grant is not always for research, please. To fund your project? Okay. You might want to specify what type of projects. Just that's from Okoro. To finance academic pursuits, okay? Travel grant to attend a conference or workshop to carry research projects that need money to run. Interesting ideas. I'll just take two more. To expand your project, international recognition, research to start up business. Interesting. To upgrade one's profile, fund project, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much. All the ideas are awesome. And then they are attributed. There are three major reasons why researcher. Oh, sorry, I keep talking about researchers because I mostly submit research grants, so I'm always talking about research. I saw research grant proposals. So there are three main reasons why people would submit grants. It's either for research, to fund a research idea, like many of us are saying. Maybe you have this big idea, it's been in your mind, and you kind of need funding to push it. Then you either have to wait for an open call, or you write to a grant making body or a grantor. Now, a grantor can be an individual, it can be an organization. You send them an inquiry letter to know if they can fund your project. Now, we also receive grants for social impact. I also received grants last year for a social impact initiative. My social impact initiative is essentially building research capacity. What I am doing now, training, I don't get paid for any of the training sessions. I do because it's a social impact activity. It's my community service. So I got the author aid grant last year to organize a workshop in University of Rwanda and University of Lagos. So you can get grants for that too. You might be interested in climate change. You might be interested in public health education. Whatever thing you're doing to make your community better, it's a social impact activity. And there are tons and tons of funding opportunities for that. And there are a couple of them I will be sharing maybe later in the WhatsApp group because I don't have them in my slide here. Yeah, like we say, we also get grants to travel. Yes, we get grants to get awards. It's not travel grants is not as common as research and social impact grants. Research and social impact grants are more common than travel grants. So, for example, you want to attend the International Conference of Public Health in Africa 2023. I think it's in Zambia, and maybe you don't have the funding. I mean, funding in terms of accommodation, transportation, and probably other logistics, you need some sort of support. So you might request for grants. Most times you don't request. Sometimes your institution would fund you or sponsor your organization. It happens. So these are the three main reasons why people need grants, right? So what should we do preparing a grant proposal? There are three stages in preparing a grant proposal. We've talked about what a grant proposal is, a written document. So the first stage is the pre-writing phase, and the second is a writing phase, and the third is a post-writing phase. So let us look at the pre-writing phase. Now, I am talking about an open call. This phase is for an open call. I told you there are two approaches. You could pass through an open call, or you can pass through a grant inquiry later. So this is for an open call. In the pre-writing phase, you've not started writing. So it's essentially asking yourself, what are the things that I should do while preparing to submit my grant proposal, preparing to write a grant proposal. At this stage, it is possible that you've not even seen a grant call yet for your idea, right? So there are four essential things that you should do while expecting a grant call. Let's say you have an idea. How should you approach that idea? What should you be doing when the funding is not yet available? I mean, when you've not even seen the funding opportunity. The first is you have to build a visible, underlined visible and measurable track record. Let's say you are a researcher and you want to apply for a research grant, then definitely you should have at least one peer-reviewed publication in a reputable journal, because the funders will, I mean, if it's a research grant, will always look at the kind of journals that you're publishing, and if it's peer-reviewed, and what kind of Q is it? Is it Q1 or Q2, and so on and so forth. So you have to build that profile. You have to build a track record. You should have started publishing, because and of course the type of publication that you've been publishing matters. You might want to do lots of original studies if you have the capacity, because sometimes they may not really consider letters and commentaries, and if you're going for very good grants, most times it's the original work or original research that you're doing. The second is developing your writing skills. Writing is an essential 21st century skill, right? So if you want to be a CEO or an academia, you know, let me forget about academia. We know for academia it's a necessity, but let's say you want to be a CEO and maybe you've been having this mindset that the only thing that you need to improve is public speaking. That is very wrong, because one thing that you will be doing as a leader, as a CEO, as a founder, as whatever, aside from public speaking, is you'll be doing lots and lots of writing. I am almost sure that from experience that you will do more of writing than public speaking as a leader, or as maybe a CEO or a founder. So writing is an essential 21st century skill. I have seen so many people have brilliant ideas. I mean, they are doing lots and lots of amazing projects, amazing community services, but they are poor in writing. They cannot transcend, they cannot convince somebody with words, and that is a problem. They cannot translate these community activities into very convincing proposals, right? So you have to develop your writing skills. You have to be able to channel all what you've been doing into convincing writing, and this is something that you build Writing is something that you train yourself on. Maybe you might want to be taking writing courses. Maybe you might want to be writing lots and lots of research papers, because for me, that is how I learned writing. So if you have the best ideas without being able to convey them properly, then it's, as a matter of fact, very much useless. The third is have an incubated idea. For me, when I submitted my RSTMH proposal, I had my idea for a month. Like if you and I even developed a more memorial for Universal Health Coverage in Nigeria. My RSTMH project, my RSTMH, hello, can you hear me? Yeah. My RSTMH project is focused on one aspect of that model. So I had the idea in mind for many months, and I developed it in my mind, and I even attempted to write a paper about it. So that is one important thing. The grant should meet your idea and not the idea meeting the grant. What do I mean? Many persons, it is when they see a grant call and they begin to look for ideas. It shouldn't really be like that, especially if you're talking about a research or a social impact grant. It should be something you're in there already, and it's recommended that you apply for grants where you've been working, the field that you've been working, the field that you've been researching. For example, if it's a research grant, the field that you've been doing your social impact activity, if it's a social impact activity, because you're more knowledgeable and you're more robust in those fields. The last thing that you need to do preparing for the writing stage is you have to follow relevant networks. So in the end, we'll talk about funders. What of funders we have? We have private funders, and then we have public funders. We have government funders, and so on and so forth. So you have to try and follow these people in social media platforms like Twitter or LinkedIn, and then you have to try to get this sort of connection or networks that can always share opportunities with you, whether it's a WhatsApp group, whether it's a LinkedIn page, whether it's a Twitter page. You have to get this kind of connections, and you get as many as possible. So for me, what I do, one of the things I do in TORASIF or any of my organizations is I share lots and lots of opportunities, day in, day out, weeks in, week out, sorry, especially in the field of public health, because I know I get the testimony. It has really been helpful to so many persons. So you have to belong to these kind of platforms. Otherwise, the opportunities come and then you don't see it. All right. We are now in the after the grant call. You've seen a grant call now. RSTMH is calling for grants, right? Yes, ISID is calling for a grant. So what are the things that you should consider? The first and most important thing is the scope. What are these people funding? If you get this stage wrong, forget about it. Don't bother yourself. If they are not funding climate change and you have a climate change idea, don't just bother about it. You might as well be wasting your time. You might want to look for climate change funders. If they are funding public health, but they are specifically funding only malaria, and you have an idea on AMR, forget about it. So you have to carefully read the type of call. What are they funding? If it's a medicine organization, a medical organization, sorry, what are they funding? Is it neurosurgery? Is it lab medicine? So these are things that you have to pinpoint at the first stage of reading the call. The second is eligibility. If you also, this one is better. If you are not eligible, you may want to collaborate with somebody who is eligible. For example, you are seeing a grant call, and the grant, they are they are giving the grants only to masters. You must have MSc or you must have PhD. And then you have a research body. That is why I would recommend you have a research body. You have a research body that is a master's student or a PhD student. You might want to collaborate with a person. And while both of you will develop the proposal, right? She can or he can submit because he's more eligible in terms of qualifications. Perhaps he has more publications, or just look at the eligibility criteria. If you're not eligible enough, you might not necessarily abandon that opportunity. You might have to look for somebody that has these eligibility criteria and collaborate with the person. But it's important that you set out some sort of memorandum of understanding, because so many persons get disappointed at this stage. So you have to state clearly, probably written understanding, no matter your familiarity with the person, that, okay, look, we are agreeing that you should do the submission because you are more eligible, but then we are collaboratively developing the proposal, and maybe it is even my idea. These are things that I want to beg you, clarify it from the beginning. If not, you would not be happy with the result. Deadline, you have to consider the deadline. Yeah, you might have the idea already, and then you just need one or two touches, you just need some sort of adaptation, or you might not have an idea at all, or the idea is still at the early stage and you need to sort of develop it. So you have to consider it and consider the deadline. If it is not feasible for you, then you might have to reconsider. Requirement, you have to check the requirements. Some grants will request a reference letter from an organization. Do you have an organization that can give you a reference letter? For example, some can be very specific. Say an organization that works on HIV, they can request from your head of the they can request from your head of department, they can request from your dean. So if these are if these are not documents you can get within the time frame, then you might want to reconsider. There may be other information, so you have to sort this information out. You have to check all these things and be sure that you are good to go. Now we are in the writing phase. Sorry, I'll just check the chat box so that I'll not be somebody's saying he can't see my screen. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes.
I think I should unmute. Okay, Felix, you can see my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Now, let's look at the essential elements of a grant proposal. It varies, but I try to put together so many grant calls I have seen, and essentially this is what they request from you. They request a problem statement. Sometimes they call it statement of need, sometimes background information. They request a project description, or sometimes they call it methods or methodology, timeline, expected outcome. They will request budgets. How much are you requesting, and what is your budget breakdown? They request referees and additional information. They can ask for about. They want to know about you. They want to know about your organization. They can ask for links, maybe link to your social media platforms, or maybe links to any feedback that might be relevant to your application. So problem statement, these are the important things your background should contain. What is the problem you're addressing? You have to state these very clearly. How is this problem true? You have to sort of prove that this problem is really existing. For example, if you say, like I was saying, that out-of-pocket spending is a big problem in Nigeria and, of course, in many sub-Saharan African countries, or probably in many LMICs. So we have to significantly reduce out-of-pocket spending and tap into domestic resources. These are the kind of things I said in my background for my Harris TMH grant. So on why is it important, I began to say that, capital that are domestically derived, or capital that are derived from domestic resources, are more predictable, and it essentially can cut the level of out-of-pocket spending. And it's when communities are controlling their funds, it's easier to predict, and it's more credible, and a whole lot of things. So why is now the best time? Of course, mine was that we are spending so much on diseases out of pocket, and it is taking us backwards in terms of the journey towards universal health coverage for Nigeria. So I was saying that, okay, if we want to achieve UHC 2030 goals, addressing out of pocket spending now, because we can believe that out of pocket spending is a crucial aspect of universal health coverage. So that was why I showed that CBHI is important. And not just that, I showed that Nigeria's CBHI programs are weak, and there is not enough data to understand the coverage, the design, and implementation challenges. So yeah, and then you have to state your research questions too. So I want to ask a question now. I wanted to discuss briefly. Is it necessary to cite consulted sources in your grant application? All right, so we are getting so many yes. It is necessary, because even if you're working on climate change or whatever you're working on, you have to prove that you have you've made some scholarly effort. You've made effort to look at what has been done, and this is one of the things that your grants managers, should I call it, grant managers, this is what they are looking for. They want to see that you are addressing a gap. For you to address a gap, you have to check what has been done. And of course, when you're looking at what other persons have done or what other persons are saying, you have to cite it. It doesn't matter what kind of grant you are applying for. It may not be a research grant. It might be a social impact grant. You have to cite it. It shows scholarly. It shows that you're making efforts. It shows scholarly experience. It shows that you're making efforts to dig into knowledge and know the problem that exists and address it from that. Because if you're just bringing everything from who knows where, maybe from your own imagination, yes, we can dismiss it as just imagination. We have to be sure that it's coming from a background. All right, the next is your project description. Right? So what is your methodology? Now it's different for research grants. Yeah, the methodology, when they ask for your project description, you might want to sort of replicate, or not exactly replication, the methodology of a typical research manuscript. Yes, because that's what they want. They want to see your study design. They want to see your methodology. Sample size, sample population, sample size calculation, all those things that they want to see in your research grant proposal. So if it is a social impact grant, you have to tell us, how do you want to do it? For example, I could say I want to train so numbers of researchers in Nigeria, in Africa, or whatever, and it is going to be a webinar or it's going to be a workshop. These are the things that you have to explain logically. and clearly. So you have to tell us, why is it innovative? What makes it innovative? Because want to fund, we don't want to keep funding the same thing. So one thing you might want to do, if you're not doing it in your methodology, if you're not doing your methodology, you have to do it in your background. You have to distinctively show how you are coming, you're solving a problem, you're having an innovative idea. You're not simply doing what has been done. You're kind of developing what has been done. We have to see that innovation, because if you keep doing what other persons are doing, then we would feel that you would fail just as they failed. So you have to show us, and you don't really have to say that. You don't have to clearly say that other persons have failed, for example. You shouldn't do that in your grant proposal, so you don't shoot yourself in the leg. You just show how your idea is distinct. It's different. Show how it's not a replication of what has been done already. Expected outcome. What should success look like to you? At the end of your project, what is success like? For example, if it's a research grant, I have published a paper, I've submitted it to a journal, I have conducted a town hall meeting to discuss the findings. If it is a social impact activity, I have educated 100 persons, so on and so forth. I often recommend that you put in a completed in a completed tense. I am not very sure of the English, but you should put it like I have trained, or at the end of the project, we have trained, something like that, to show that at the end of the project, you have completed this and you have completed that. Or you can also tell us the timeline. It's very important, and almost all grants applications ask for this. When is it starting? When is it ending? Sometimes they want you to tell them, what will you be doing every month? What will you be doing in 3 months' time? Or just give us a timeline, how your activities will flow. Sometimes they ask for limitation of your methods. What you have to be honest with it. What do you think is not too perfect about the approach or the innovation that you bring in? Tips: be as clear as possible. Please and please, your plan should be specific, measurable, accurate, reliable, and what's the last one? There should be smart goals, and you should not try to be. I thought somebody's trying to answer the last T for smart. Thank you very much. Time bound. I forgot it. It should be time bound. This is very, very important. And if you can use smart to develop your method or your project description, then I think you're almost good to go. Don't be over ambitious. You will not save the world in a $5,000 grant. It's probably not, obviously not possible. And sometimes grant is not by how much. They are not looking by how much. So you don't try to impress them by saying you are going to use $2,000 to save 5 billion people. You're not a magician. And if you're stating this kind of things, we are already skeptical. Either they'll see you as a clown, or they'll see you as somebody that doesn't know what he is doing. So don't get too ambitious. Don't try to impress them with that. When we say being innovative, it doesn't mean that you cannot adopt. You have to adopt, but modify an already established method. For example, my research on RSTMS is not a method I formulated by myself. It's a key informant interview. Key informant interview is already an established type of research method. So it's often recommended you use an established type of research method. In fact, when I was preparing my proposal, I cited studies that have used that kind of method, and it's very easy for the reviewer to be sure that, okay, look, you're not bringing this idea from the moon. But why even though I used an already established method, there is no study that is doing what I propose to do. So that is still what makes it innovative. Budget, very, very important. How would you use grant money? list any items with associated costs. Tips: the format varies with grant. Yeah, most times the grants call comes with a budget format. In fact, an application format. So they tell you how they want you to report the budget, and maybe they might need justification for each of the budget items. So you have to get that budget format from them. If it's not available in the grants call,
This meeting is being recorded.
because one thing I've noticed, most people when they submit grants, they don't include money for themselves. They feel that maybe it's not part of the grant, it's like cheating or something. So I want to know what you think. Should personal time or personal remuneration be included as a budget item? I'm going to the chat box now. Somebody says for me, that's interesting. Somebody said yes. I am going to allow. So somebody's raising, and I think I should allow the person. Yo, Guda. So many persons are saying yes. I'm interested in the person that says no.
Yeah.
Okay, he's a person that is speaking. Go ahead.
Yes, evening everyone. Yes. I mentioned no because actually when we apply for grants, we are students most of the time, or what we are trying to do is for the sake of humanity, and the benefit is going beyond, the little money that we can gain for it. They want to see, what is the reasons behind actually why we are doing what we are doing. And if we start asking money or include our money, it is going to feel like you are applying for your own personal interest, when maybe, for example, the project is actually to help a community to solve a problem. It's not like a personal interest. So We have to see the impact, not even our own personal interest in this situation.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, Grace, what you're saying is correct. Some funders will specify what and what not to budget for. I think I'll talk a little about that. But I want to get an argument from somebody that is saying yes, just in few seconds, please. And Anthony Age.
So this will mostly not request that you they fund 100% of your project, right? Nowadays, you're looking at what contribution do you have on board? What is your internal contribution? So if writing a budget, you are supposed to include personal remuneration or whatever, I think that would be a no for me, because I mean, it will indicate your lack of internal strength to support the project when it comes. So I mean, I'll go for no.
Okay, that's a no. Okay, we have two no. Just one person that says yes, please. Just a few seconds, please. Can get Salom Yumbura. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it well. I'll just take from Kangete.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm Kangete. So I think you should. I can say yes to the question, because as you said, we're not trying to impress. Include your personal remuneration. It shows how much time and resources you're going to dedicate to the project here, and it actually needs to be paid for. Yeah. Thank you. Was I audible?
Yes, please. I'm just a bit lost somewhere. I'm trying to go back to my screen. Just a sec. All right, great. Yeah, I have both of you might be correct to some extent. So I think it ultimately it ultimately depends on the instruction of the grantors. But if they have not outrightly told you that, which is very rare, I have not seen anyone before. If they have not outrightly told you that you should not include remuneration or personal time, then I think you should include. And there is a limit. Sometimes they give you a limit and say you cannot pass these. Sometimes each budget item like RSTMH have a limit. For example, in RSTMH, if you're saying you're purchasing a tablet, there is a limit, there's a percentage limit which can be allocated for that. So the argument on you are doing a community service and then you don't have to include remuneration of personal time. Yeah, my response to that might be that, by personal time, I could specify by saying internet data. I could specify by saying many. I can specify some things. And if you look at it, well, these are equal resources that you're spending money for. And I think, like the last person said, it shows your level of honesty. It shows that you're truly telling them, look, I would need some money for myself. And it's a very honest thing to say. So I think if they have not outrightly said that you cannot do this, then you should always include it. Because if you make your budget so tight, and to be honest, if we are to be honest, one of the reasons why we win grant is to be able to solve some personal problems. Yeah, that is true. You don't use all the grant money for grants. I don't know if it's unethical, but I'm being honest with the experiences I've had with some persons. So you might want to be honest from the start to allocate that money in your budget so that your grantors will see. Otherwise, if you make your budget so tight and everything is on consumables, on equipment, at the end, you need to spend money on personal time. It might warrant maybe buying substandard products because you have to cut money from somewhere. So it's always better you do that from the beginning. What about miscellaneous? Should we include miscellaneous? I'll just take one person. Should we include miscellaneous? Somebody said yes. Participants are raising hands. I'm not sure we have so much time, but I will take just one person. Yes, remuneration for writing of the proposal in the budget should be included. Sorry, I'm just okay, great. I'm trying to look at the persons that have raised their hands, and I'm finding it a bit difficult to do that. But let me just go ahead. You should try to avoid miscellaneous as much as possible. Even when you specify miscellaneous, or sometimes we call it reasonable contingency, you have to specify what are you anticipating would be your miscellaneous. For example, you could say transportation. There could be fluctuations in transportation. That is a given. It might be some sort of overhead costs that you're trying to cushion for, because you're imagining that the cost of certain things might be more than you expected. These are things you should clarify, but just saying miscellaneous, it's a no-no for me. It seems because it looks as if you're trying to hide money under the canopy of miscellaneous. So you have to clarify what the miscellaneous is for if you have to include it. The last, probably, or one of the things that we request is referees. Most often than not, your grant management team will always ask for referees, people to give you some sort of reference letter, sometimes to vouch that you can carry out that project, to vouch that that is a need. Most of these grantors are foreign organizations, so they sort of need an experienced person, experienced researcher, to vouch that that is truly an important need in your community. So they also need somebody to vouch of your credibility, your honesty. Is this person honest? Can this person carry out this project? Is the person robust enough? So many other things like that. So essentially, your referees have to say some good things about you, that you can carry out that project, and what you want to do is important, and that they have worked with you probably, and they can attest of your resourcefulness and your ability to those kind of things. Three things to avoid: don't use people you know, but they don't know you very well. Don't use people that are not aware that you are using them as referees. That is enough for you to lose your very, I would call it, or well-written grant application. If you get your referee wrong, you can lose everything that you've struggled for. So you have to be very careful. It is very important. The last one says you don't use somebody that you've, of course, had a strained relationship with. You have to use somebody you have of good terms, because whatever your referee says, that is what they believe. If your referee says you are stubborn or whatever, they would believe, and you've lost it. So you have to use, I often recommend something. Even if you belong to international organizations, and you might want to use your international include professors that have many papers, global recognition, work with your local institution, work with your head of department, try to get most recommendation letter from your head of department organization. So sometimes they ask for supervisors. Again, it has to be somebody you follow in your institution, because one thing these people want to see, they also want to establish relationship with your faculty members. So don't think that your faculty members are local. As much as they are making important contributions to science. I mean, they are publishing and they are doing one or two things. I'm talking about research grants. I think you can use them. Don't think that they are local. One of the things that these grantors want, they want to establish relationship with your local faculty members, and they are very much interested in them. So they might ask for other information, links to your social media handles, and they will also ask you to tell them how these grants will further your career. Because these informations are at the end, please and please don't take them as unimportant. If they're asking you how it will further your career, if you cannot state clearly how it will further your career, it means you just applying grants for applying sake. You have to link
Recording in progress.
you have to link your grants application to your short-term and long-term goals. You have to convince them, okay, that look, you really need this grant at this time because of social and so reasons, and this is where winning these grants can take you to. Social media platform or any relevant link, your website or whatever, to show your social impact activities or your research publications. Post-writing phase. After writing the proposal, what are the things that you consider? Editing, you have to do lots and lots of editing. Editing will make the text more readable, clear, and it will adjust the style and citations. This is actually a difference between editing and proofreading. Proofreading will try to eliminate errors and mistakes by trying to address spellings and formatting. And after that, review. Do that as many times as possible. The more you review, like they say, the more you look, the more you see, not the less you see. For a writing or a scientific article, the more you look, the more you see. So the more you review your article, the better. And it's often recommended that you get a third eye to review your grant proposal. But if you're satisfied with your review, then it's fine, you can submit. How do you write the cover page? Aha, that's another thing. Sometimes they ask for a cover page. That is it's sometimes if it's not cover page, they call it motivation or how will this advance your career. They're essentially the same thing. I will take the questions later, please. General tips, what are the do's and don'ts? Be organized and start early. That is number one. Most grants will give you minimum of 1 month. It is rare, although I've seen a grant that the window was just 2 weeks, but most times they will give you enough time, sufficient. Let me use the word sufficient time. The demands is not much, but if they give you 2 months, 1 month, 3 months, you might want to plan, because maybe there are certain documents you need to put in place, there are certain things you need to arrange, and these are not things that you do in a matter of days. So this is one mistake many persons make. Keep it short and straight to point. They have thousands, sometimes thousands, like RSTMH, there are thousands of grants, and each review, I'm assuming, might have, I don't know, 10, 20, I don't know, depending on how many reviewers that they have. So you might want to be short and straight to point. It's not about the quality. It's not about the quantity of words. It's really about the quality, how much sense you're making. So it can be very short, but it's making so much sense and you're good to go. Include resources in your grant proposal. I'm talking about references. Show that you have consulted sources. Show why you need it. I said that in the introduction. You have to show us that this is an important need and you really need this grant. Don't be too ambitious. We've talked about that. Don't assume the reader knows. So don't use jargons. And when we say don't assume the reader knows, for example, I'm working on CBHI, Community-Based Health Insurance Scheme. I will not assume that the reader knows the importance of CBHI or the importance of universal health coverage. I have to state clearly in the grant proposal the importance of CBHI. So you don't assume that, of course, every public health researcher should know. No, you don't assume this kind of things. If you don't put it, the reviewer will assume that you don't know. So that's why it has to be there. You have to demonstrate cost effectiveness or value for money. For example, if you're given 5,000 USD, you should not do a project that is worth 2,000 USD. You're indirectly flagging yourself and you're saying that you are going to embezzle the money. So you have to consider value for money. If you are requesting 5,000, then try and match up a project of 5,000. Or if your project is a small one, then don't request for 5,000, request for 2,000, what you need for the project. Otherwise, you lose everything. It presents proofs to back up your need statement. For example, if you say that if you're doing a social impact activity on climate change, or let's say on health education, or let's say on water, sanitation, and I want to share pictures of where your community members are drinking water. Maybe you can upload it in your Google folder and share the link with them, or you might share a link to any newspaper that is published online or whatever, but there should be something to back up. If it's not a very popular problem, I didn't need to back up CBHI because CBHI is a popular problem already. I didn't need to back up that it's a problem. So if you have something like cholera or something like trachoma, those things that may be specific to tropical countries or that may be specific to your community, then you should have pictures. You should have pictures to back it up. So don't exceed the word limit. This is very important. Exceeding the word limit shows that you are careless. And it means essentially that you might as well be careless with the work. So you have to be very careful not to exceed the word limit no matter what. Some reviewers will the points of the word limit. If it's 350, they stop reading at 350. Some, if they see that you have exceeded the word limit, they might mark you down, they might score you down, or they might penalize you. Most times, grants have scores for each section. There is a score for your profile, there is a score for your grant proposal, how well you articulate your ideas, there's a score for your statement of need, and at the end of it, they'll sum up all the score, and maybe all those that score 50 over 70 get the grant, something like that. Sometimes there's a rubric like that. I've experienced that in some of the grants I've applied for. So if they score you down on something that you should not have been scored poorly for, then you know that it's going to affect your overall grade. Don't leave important information out. Pay attention to detail, and one other thing, give up. One other thing is that you should not give up. You might submit up to 10 proposals, for example, and then you lose the first 5, and you might feel discouraged. When I started submitting grant proposal, I lost the first 2 grants consecutively. I remember I submitted 4 proposals during that period, and I lost the first 2. You can imagine how you'd feel consecutively. This one came out, we are sorry. This other one came out, we are sorry. And I almost got discouraged. But then when the last 2 came out, I was successful in them. So sometimes it happens like that. You have to always and ask yourself why you failed. For example, one of those proposals I failed was because my methodology was not good enough. I assumed that they should understand. So I didn't spend time talking about my method, how I am going to do that. And they said it in the email they sent to me that they were not clear how I was going to do what I said I was going to do. And I thought that they should understand, and that was why I failed. And the other one I failed, I am not too sure because there was no feedback, but I think it was because maybe they were not granting what I was requesting for. Probably there was some other error. You have to check again. get assistance if you need one, if you need somebody who is good in writing. Writing is very important. If somebody is reading your proposal and is full of grammatical errors and spelling errors, then it's a tune up for the person. You might want, especially if you're a native English speaker, you might want to give to somebody who is a native to review for you. Or if you're not very good in writing, it's one thing for you to be a native English speaker. It's another thing for you to be very good in writing. So if you're not very reading. Now, there is something I did for RSTMH before I submitted my proposal. I wasn't sure if RSTMH were going to fund CBHI program. So I wrote to them and I told them, this is the idea I have. Is this something you can fund? Because I had like two ideas. I was saying, should I push this one or should I push this one? Because I was feeling that CBHI doesn't look like tropical medicine. I thought maybe RSTMH would mostly fund things like malaria, trachoma, those kind of tropical diseases. So, CBHI is not really like a tropical, of course, it's not a tropical disease. So I was just thinking in that direction. So I just cleared my doubts by writing to them and they told me, fine, good, you can submit the proposal. So this is something that you might want to consider if you're not sure. I know Tobacco Harm Reduction Scholarship, they do this too. They allow you to ask this sort of question. Please, this is the topic I have. Can I submit it? And one beautiful thing Tobacco Harm Reduction Scholarship does is that they can even help you modify the idea. So if you're telling them this, they can tell you, you've not yet submitted your proposal. They can tell you, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? So these are some of the things that you might want to explore. Share with a peer and share with a mentor and feedbacks. Go after grants of all sizes. It's not about it's too small, it's too large. Well, we have different experiences and achievement. Perhaps to you, 5,000 is nothing, but to another person, 5,000 USD can be a life changer for the person's project. To you, 500 USD may not fund anything, but to another person, 500 USD is enough for the person to fund his project. So it's personal opinion, but I can suggest that, especially if you're starting, don't select, even if it's 10 USD, of course, 10 is too small anyway. But whatever may be the case, you might want to go for grants of all sizes. I'll just go through the chat box to be sure I'm not missing any important message. So how do you identify funding opportunities? Okay. Well, I had said it already, joining platforms where they share opportunities. Like I do that with TORASIF or CSRM or even with Hopefully Nigeria. I always share opportunities in our community platforms. There are others, there are many of my friends that do that too. Some posts on the status, and you might want to be following this kind of persons. Of course, it's important. You check social media too. What kind of things are your friends reposting on LinkedIn or retweeting on Twitter? And sometimes I actively just research grants on Twitter, because I know most of these bodies they're on Twitter. So I kind of scroll through the top feeds or the most recent feeds that come up. So you might want to explore that option too. So you might want to follow most of these grant bodies on social media. There are individual funders and then there are organizations. So you might want to identify these categories of persons. There are individuals that can fund a project. I got funding for my undergraduate from a philanthropist. So you see, I just wrote a grant inquiry letter. That time I wasn't really, I'm not sure I called it a grant inquiry letter, but I just wrote a letter to him. Someone connected him to me, so I wrote him an email, and I didn't get a response the first two times I wrote, and I almost got discouraged. I tried a third time, and fortunately responded, and our conversation started. So you can identify philanthropies, and you have to demonstrate genuine need, and you should have somebody like your head of department or a faculty member in your school that can attest of, I mean, even for the fact that you are even maybe a student, a master's or PhD student in that school. Because that was my experience. At some point, the person requested the contact of my faculty members, preferably head of department, and I shared it, and that was how it went well. So we are getting to the end. These are the only two. Unfortunately, I would share others. I don't know if you have shared anyone on the chat box. These are the only two I could come up with, but I would share more in the WhatsApp platform. RST Image Grant is currently ongoing, so you might want to check it out. And in this part grant is for antimicrobial resistance. I am sure that we have many, I'm sure that we have many AAMR advocates here. So you might want to consider the PAR Foundation grants. It's currently open. There is also Catalyst grants. Is for a social impact. Is for social impacts activities. We have Einstein grant. There are lots of them. I would share them later, I promise. I know we have recently the United Nations SDGs grants, so I would share those resources too. All right, thank you very much for listening. I'll be taking questions now. Okay, please, let me take this one. To apply for social intervention grant, must one be registered by CAC before applying? Thank you very much. It depends. So you have to check the instruction, the requirements. Most times, I have to be honest with you, they always request that the organization is registered. So you have to try and register your organization. But fortunately, there are other grant opportunities, and they don't require the organization to be registered. For example, Catalyst, Roddenberry, I always call it Catalyst grant, but it's Roddenberry Catalyst grant. So you might check that out. I'll share the link. It doesn't require the organization to be registered. I think there's also IF Social Impacts Prize, and it doesn't require the organization to be registered.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Thank you for the elaborate explanations and guidelines. Please, there is something I want to find out. Most times, the fund. Can someone hear me out?
Yes, please.
Okay, the funders who may ask, are you running another grant, or are you under a scholarship, or are you under another fellowship? So in that instance now, I try to understand whether answering the truth the way it is will be of disadvantage to the person asking for the grant, or will it be of an advantage, knowing that I may not necessarily know what is in their mind, the backdrop at which they're asking that question. So how do I go about such questions in research the grant application?
Just a sec, I'm trying to share something in the chat box. That's why I'm delaying to respond. Okay, this is the post-workshop feedback. Please just click. You can fill it while you are while we are still interacting, and share in the WhatsApp group, please, whichever one is comfortable for you. Okay, to answer that, yes, you have to be honest. You have to tell them if you're receiving a grant, they don't want to double fund it. So if you receive a grant for that particular thing already, then there is no need. If you are not actually find that, because answered.
This meeting is being recorded.
That you've not, is it for a research grant or a social impact project? Just clarify, please. I didn't get that part. I don't know if anybody can hear me. I just want to know if it.
Yes.
But because, let me just go ahead. If it's a research grant, then I don't know if there is any other way, but you have to sort of have publications. You have to have a researcher, even if it's not independent, not something you publish by yourself, but you collaborated, you assisted. Okay, you you
This meeting is being recorded.
Somewhere. So if you don't have a background, it's more or less like telling us that you don't have a good idea. Because a good idea is always built from somewhere. It's always built from other good ideas. So please confirm in the chat box if the question is answered. I'll take another question, please.
Okay, good evening once again. My question is more of, I'm curious, since this is the first time I'm interacting with grant writing, what is the motivation of the founders? What is the actual benefit, or rather, what do they get from funding people? Yeah, what's the motivation of these founders? Do they get the rights to the intellectual property, for example, if you do a research? Or yeah, that's my question.
Sorry, it's because I'm trying to use two devices, so that's why I am delaying to respond. Well, I think it's a very smart and intelligent question because you have to understand that somehow. What is the motivation for the funders? Well, for them, providing grants is for some is some sort of their own social impact activity. It's a philanthropic activity because most of the funders, let's say RSTMH, the money they use for the grant, to the best of my knowledge, is not entirely sourced from the organization. It's sourced from the US, UK government, from the National Institute of Health. They get it from so many funders. So they have bigger funders, and when they are getting funds from these bigger funders, they tell the funders what they want to use the money for. That they want to promote research in, let's say, low and middle income countries, and they want to promote research by funding research projects. So that is, I think, their number one motivation. They're getting the money for it, and they are telling them that this is what they want to do. So they have to do what they requested for the money for. It's just like if you get a RSTMH grant, you might get some persons who will work for you, and then you have to pay those people something. So it's something of that nature. So aside from that, it depends. Some may request for the project as their own intellectual property. It depends. I have not experienced that before, so I don't know. Some may want you to publish in their journal. Some may want you to they just want to have visibility. Because if I win RSTMH grant, for example, I've been talking about RSTMH ever since. So that's a credit for RSTMH. If you didn't know about RSTMH, definitely you have to Google search RSTMH. So that is a credit to them, and this is really what they are looking for. So if you win a grant, I want to suggest something. If you can laud it. Don't try to be a silent achiever. If you can talk about it, talk about it, and tap these organizations because they like it, they want it. That is something that they really enjoy to see. They want to see people promoting their names. Yeah. I don't know. Please confirm. Please, is there any other question? I've seen somebody saying, must you have research publication? I would say, to the best of my knowledge, it is a necessity if you're applying for a research grant, unless you prove to us that you can carry out this project with the support of your faculty. Yeah, I am speaking like the grant management team now. You have to prove to them that you can carry out this project.
Hello. Good evening.
Yes, I can.
Can somebody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
We have
Okay.
a few more minutes to take some more questions.
Okay. If you're writing proposal and
The recording has stopped.
like to ask for
This meeting is being recorded.
social media links to your previous social impact, and if you don't have that, does it affect your grant proposal?
Okay, to answer that, if you don't have a social media handle, you should have some sort of pictures, some proof. So you might want to share that with them, maybe through Google Doc or whatever, but somehow there should be some level of visibility to your work, because this is the 21st century, and somehow the burning truth is that social media presence is very important. You should try to let the world see what you're doing, because it's a way of gauging that, or proving that you're actually doing those things in your community. So if you don't have these things in your social media handles, then it's difficult. But if you have the pictures, you can share it with them, and you should try to you can just try. I mean, if you have the pictures, you have the posts, you have the information, why don't you just get your social media handles ready for this purpose? That is just what I think. Just let me know in the chat box if it has been answered, please.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Emmanuel.
Hello, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Can hear you well.
Yes, very clearly.
Okay. I'm actually interested in I'm making attempts to pursue a research work in business analysis outside the country. Is it possible to get a funding opportunity for your academic pursuits outside your country? Sort of. Thank you.
Yes, 100%. You can get funding for your academic pursuits. So usually this one, sometimes they make it open. I would recommend that all of us belong to AuthorHead community platform. I don't have the link now, but if you're in the WhatsApp group, I would share it with you, because AuthorHead, I see many posts that in AuthorHead. So the opportunities are there, but if they are not coming, you have to ask for it. Like I see people asking in AuthorHead that they need, because AuthorHead has a community of thousands of researchers all over the world. So people ask for the people make this kind of request that they need funding to pursue so and so thing in this and that, and people that have these connections or these assistants or people that see these opportunities shared with them. So there are opportunities like that, but it's the issue of actually seeing and sourcing for those opportunities. Thank you. Please confirm that it has been answered in the chat box. So Peter is saying, does publication in any journal count? Any journal in quote does not count. Predatory journals do not count. Specific journals, no. I mean, are there specific journals? The answer is no. The journal has to be peer reviewed. It has to be a peer reviewed journal, and it has to be a credible journal. So those are, I would say, the not so those are the specifications. Those are the specifications. I've heard you talk about preparing your social media for the opportunities. What exactly do you mean? I am saying that in this age, as I'm concerned, might be a personal opinion, but your social media presence matters a lot, and it makes significant impact to your grant application. So if you're telling people that you have been working on climate change in your community, where is the proof? How do we confirm this? Because if you have a functional social media platforms where time to time you let us see what you're doing, then if I'm reading your proposal, I come across where you're saying that you help so and so number of persons in your community or so and so number of children get good education, I would go to your social media platform to confirm. Because if it is a lie, most likely you'll not upload it on social media. So the social media post sort of gives it some kind of credibility since it's a public space. AuthorHead, yes, this is the link to AuthorHead, and yes, you can check for the community platform there. I don't know if there's any other question.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Cotton. Thank you for the last session. I don't know if you have said this in the session, because there was a point I was not in the session. So my question is actually on RSTMH. So I want to ask if the chances of maybe conducting a secondary type of research other than a primary one, a primary study, like going to the field work, so to say, because it's more like a project. So I want to know what are the chances of someone who proposed to do a secondary type of research, maybe a scoping review or something, compared to someone who wants to do a primary study. And also the second question is, what really stands people out in their proposal? I mean, is it the topic alone, apart from the publication and maybe the recommendation? What other things should we take note of while drafting our proposal for such grants like the RSTMH? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Very interesting questions. The first question.
This meeting is being recorded.
Question? Okay, let me start answering from the second one. The second one says, what stands people out? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can anybody hear me? Okay, great. The second question says, what stands people out? I told us that each section of the grant proposal have points attached to them. So you can see somebody that doesn't have so much experience actually getting the grant. It's possible because it's not always about experience. Experience is a point on its own, right? So if you present a very good proposal, it's clear, your methods are clear, and the need, there is a score for the need. How much is this really a need? And if yes, how much? How can we quantify it so it gets a point and your budget gets a point, all those things get the points. So if you work very well on all these aspects, you may not have a very pronounced profile or publication. You can still win a grant. So I think I've answered that first question. Then there's a question that says, should you exaggerate social impact activities? I would say don't try to be modest. And I don't know. I would say it's a personal opinion. You might not want to exaggerate too much, but maybe exaggerating a little is not bad. It's a personal opinion, so you have to judge that with your conscience and everything. Okay, somebody said I have been involved in lots of community programs, but I've never uploaded pictures. Okay, excuse me, let me answer the question of primary versus secondary research. Yes, primary research, if you ask me, they are on top of funding options. Yes, definitely. They're on top of funding options. And I was really waiting for you to specify the type of secondary research. The secondary research that goes on top are systematic reviews and, like you said, scoping reviews. But those you have to justify your budget. How much are you requesting for them, and justify why that money is needed for that secondary research? Because secondary research are usually seen as, I would say, less cost effective. You're not going to the field. You're essentially generating the data from the comfort of your house. So maybe aside from things like tablets and maybe training resources and maybe getting access to certain repositories, your budget might not have a lot of things. So that is just a difference. Please confirm in the chat box if you're comfortable with the response. I've been involved in several community programs, but I've never bought that uploading pictures online or any of them. Should I go back? I think that you have to build a brand, not really online as per se, but maybe LinkedIn is fine because LinkedIn is for professional
stuff. Maybe your Twitter is for your politics, then good and fine. If they're asking you for a link, don't use your Twitter handle. You can use your Twitter handle for your politics. You can use your WhatsApp for anything you like, your Facebook for anything you like. But at least you should have a LinkedIn account that tells people what you're doing. But should it be that you don't want to do this, have a Google folder where you upload these pictures and we can see that it is you and we can see the things that you're doing. So even if you've not uploaded them on Google, on social media, which is actually very important, grant team or grant management team, please confirm if that is okay. I think that is all the questions for today. I'll take one last question, probably. Peter, please confirm that the question has been answered. Yeah, Google, is it Google folder? Yes, Google folder, then share the link with them. And one thing you can do, there are personal feedbacks people give you. Maybe thank you very much for what you did. It's changed my life. It helped me change my career, all those kind of things. You may not post those ones on social media. It doesn't look very correct, or well, it's an opinion. These are things that you can just fix them in a Google folder and you call it feedbacks. And when you're making any grant application, depending on what you're making the grant for example, if you are making grant for RSTMH research, those things might not really be applicable. But if you're looking for a travel grant or a grant to prove your leadership or your community services, then those leadership feedbacks you get from people or from your community members, you can upload them in a Google folder and then share it with your grantors.
Hello, please. Is there any question?
Okay, somebody said something about gender equity. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by having leads, but there are lots of grant opportunities for gender inequality. For example, the UN SDGs. If you have an initiative that is promoting gender equity, you can apply for the social impact. Let me take one last question in 2 minutes.
There is a person that asks about. The person is asking what is development of topics in grant writing, and what is research question in grant writing.
Well, development of these are just basic research requirements. So if you're working on a research project, then you should have a topic. If you're working on a research project, then you should have a research question. So if you don't understand what is a research question or how to develop a topic, then you need a research training. Okay, cool. Isa, you can go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, sir. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for the enlightening presentation. I like what to appreciate. I like what to appreciate your contribution. I just want to ask. You said it's a prerequisite for somebody to have a publication before assessing any grant. I don't know, the grant in question, must it be in your area of focus, in your period of publications? I don't know. That's let me verify. Hello, sir.
Yes. It's recommended that you request for. I said that during the lesson that it's recommended you request for grants in your field because you are more knowledgeable in your field and you are more you understand the problem better and you have a stronger capacity to carry out a work in your field. So when you submit a grant proposal for your field, it's more convincing. For example, I have never done anything on climate change. If I would start looking for grants on climate change, it will give me serious tough time. I'll have to start doing some work on climate change.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. I would, before I leave the floor for the host, I want to appreciate everybody that has attended. And then, does anybody has a feedback survey, please? I lost it, so you can reshare because I want you to fill the feedback survey. We will also share it in the WhatsApp group. So if you're not in the WhatsApp group, you can request for the link to the WhatsApp group because most of the grant opportunities I am highlighting now, I'll be sharing the links in the group for you to apply. So thank you very much, and I will be available to maybe answer your questions. You can reach out to me via email or WhatsApp, whichever one is comfortable for you. That'll be all for my end. Felix, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fortune. We are so much blessed by you have been endowed with a lot of knowledge, and then we have a lot. We have a very good informative session. We thank you once again. Thank you for your time, everything for us. We thank you so much. We are grateful to having you. Well, to my participants, I'm so grateful for your comportment, how you were able to like everything about the session. I'm very, very much grateful. We thank you very much. And then please, if you've not filled the post survey form, I'll post it in the group, the WhatsApp page. Kindly join so that you have the chance to fill. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening and a very good night too. Thank you.